Welcome to Programmatic Untangled, New Marketing Institute's monthly podcast. This is the show where we'll be discussing digital advertising's most mysterious topics, from education on programmatic, big data, and audience management, just to name a few. I'm your host, Harry Duran. Join us as we tackle the mysteries of the ad tech industry together. Welcome back to Programmatic Untangled. In case you missed our last episode, we tackled the mobile landscape with MediaMath's VP of Channel Solutions, Michael Weaver. Michael's 2 decades of experience in digital marketing give him a unique perspective on all the ways the industry has continued to innovate. This episode, we're privileged to have our first guest from outside the MediaMath family, dialing in from Australia, Indy Khabra, who's the National Managing Director at Amnet for Australia and New Zealand. Originally from Vancouver, Canada, Indy started in digital media prior to the rise of Programmatic when joining an SEO startup managing their display network. He then moved to Sydney, Australia as global GM of an independent trading desk managing remote offices in San Francisco, Buenos Aires, Singapore, and Sydney before moving to agency land. When he's not leading the Amnet ad operation and client relationships teams in the programmatic evolution, you can find him repurposing cricket grounds for soccer pitches, looking out for new apps to make his life a bit more efficient, and/or fueling his entrepreneurial spirit by incubating new business ideas. Indy, welcome to Programmatic Untangled.
Thank you for having me.
How's the bio holding up, and is it make you long for more time to do some of those things?
Yeah, I don't know if it makes me sound old or it kind of makes you think back and reflect on where you come from, what you've done over the last little bit. So it's kind of nice, actually.
Is it continue to paint an accurate picture of what your programmatic journey has been so far?
Yeah, I think so. I was fortunate enough to do a lot of different things in that period of time, which has got me to where I am now. I think a little bit of operations and a little bit of client side, and I think I'm a techie in heart, so all of that feeds to where I am now.
Have you seen a lot of examples of people looking at new ways of delivering content like we're trying to do with this podcast?
I think podcasts are great, to be honest with you. There's definitely a rise in interest in and adoption of podcasts. And, in Australia, I'm seeing more and more people listening to podcasts on their way to work and coming into work and saying, "Hey, did you listen to episode 3 or 5?" And so I think the diversity of where content is being distributed is it's quite exciting.
And I think we've been able to kick it off in a great way with some really interesting conversations. We've spoken to Joanna O'Connell, the CMO of MediaMath, and Elise James DeCruz. We've got conversations with Michael Weaver on mobile, and we've got some upcoming conversations with the actual CEO as well. And so I'm wondering if in this specific conversation, we can talk a little bit about the programmatic divide. The way we see it, there's 3 types of programmatic users. The first are those steeped in programmatic, such as ad tech vendors or agency staff working on trading desks, and early adopters who've got their heads around the technology. And then there's the people new to programmatic. And then there's a group that falls somewhere in the middle. For those of us talking this idea of programmatic for a couple of years, it's easy to forget that we're not all on the same page. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on the importance of education in this situation.
I think the education piece is becoming critical for the future of programmatic and digital, just as you see, programmatic taking the lion's share of digital, and it continues to grow and evolve, and that's not slowing down year on year, and you can see that from the statistics. But it's important that we fuel and we continue to bring in kind of new wave of people into the workforce from a skill set perspective. And I think we need to go into more of almost like the grassroots of digital and go into the universities and the colleges in a real pragmatic approach, and starting to bring those and looking at how we can educate them and bring them into the workforce. So I think that's really important. There are those who have been in the space for a long time, and I think it's the responsibility of those individuals to do that and take time out and to educate. But it also kind of goes all the way out to, when we're talking to publishers and we're also talking to our clients. There is such a complexity of programmatic, and everybody has a very different definition of what programmatic is. And that's something that everybody needs to work on together on, is to bring a sense of simplicity to the complex environment that we work in on a day-to-day basis. And you forget that those who are in programmatic every day, it's our day-to-day. It's so easy for us to forget that somebody from the outside looking in sees it very differently. That time is now moving very quickly. And I was saying to a friend the other day that the future employee of programmatic needs to be like the Michelangelo. You need to have such a very vast skill set, and it's becoming more and more that way. It's not just you're able to use data analytics and look at how do you crunch numbers, but it's also, you need to be able to storytell, and you need to be able to take that narrative and really share what programmatic can do for your brand and your clients and your consumers. And it takes a very unique combination of skill sets to do that. And and all of that is fueled by ongoing education.
Yeah, it's such an interesting example because this idea of the Renaissance man is someone who can even study something that's not directly related to what they're in, but just by virtue of having to use a different set of part or a different part of his brain, they're thinking outside the box. So when they apply that to what they do on a day-to-day basis, they've got that perspective, which is really important.
Yeah, definitely. It's a combination of that creative and analytics, and to be able to adapt quickly into a space that's moving at such a rapid pace. The ones that I'm really seeing succeeding and moving forward are those ones that are able to just take on what's changing and what's evolving, and being very agile to change.
Do you think that's something you can train people on, or is that something something that you can acquire, or is it just an inherent collection of skills that people have that make them suitable for this?
Yeah, I think there are those unicorns, I think, where you will have specific individuals that just it comes quite naturally. But then you also have the benefits of programmatic, where you can have sub skill sets that are in a specific area. So if you want to be an expertise in operations or data and analytics, if you want to be an expertise in client and account management or innovation or products, there is so many sub areas of programmatic that makes it so unique in the way that it is. So I would say it's a bit of both. There are those that have the unicorns, and I think there are those that are very good at very specific skill sets that are required.
Can you think back to when you first became exposed to programmatic?
Yeah, I can. It's something really funny, because my passage to programmatic it kind of comes through print advertising, which is really funny. But back in Vancouver, I remember having a conversation with a print ad salesperson from a local newspaper, and we chatted for a considerable amount of time before, I said I wasn't interested in what he was selling. But I remember stepping back, and really the reason is that I couldn't understand or get my head around how my customers or my clients were going to be looking at the inside of the back page on an advertisement, and it just kind of led me to think and ponder around. There has to be a better way to advertise, and then that kind of took me down kind of the rabbit hole into the world of ad servers and JavaScript tags and ad networks and DSPs and RTB, and I really haven't looked back since, and I'm in love with the space. So it was fortunate that person had sparked that interest of what we call now viewability and measurement, and back then I didn't know that. So yeah, that's kind of my passage into programmatic.
What's so interesting about the story is that it came from a different field, if you will, and it's something that triggered something in you. So in a way, leading to the description that you had before, it sounds like you were almost describing yourself as someone who eventually made their way into programmatic.
Yeah, it is. It's I never looked at it that way, but I I don't know. I'm a very curious individual, and I like to learn and try to figure things out. And that was kind of something that I knew there would have been a better way to do it, and not to take away anything from the print world. I grew up reading the sports section while drinking my coffee in the morning. So yeah, I think there's a space for everywhere.
Yeah, it's interesting how the reading of the newspaper becomes such a tactile exercise, and sometimes we tend to do it just for the ability for that it has to take us away from the screen.
Oh, totally. I still do that sometimes, and so when I'm looking at through newspapers and I see an advertisement, and I'm like, wow, look, this is an advertisement in print. I'm still looking at these.
So what is the biggest barrier to entry into programmatic for brands, and how do you think we can bridge that?
Well, I think we talked about the education piece. That's I believe still such a large portion of the barrier of entry, and it's just the understanding. I saw a comic strip the other day that had marketer, a house that has the marketer in it, and a person standing in the front door, and you had three cars out front. One was tech, one was talent, and one was publishers, and it was just full. All of them were full, and they're all holding signs saying, "Hey, pick me." And that's quite daunting, and it's can be overwhelming for those who are not familiar with the space. So an education and to be able to navigate the landscape, I think is quite important. And I think that's definitely a barrier. I would also say the simplicity piece. There is a lot of conversations, and they can get complex very quickly, and perhaps I'm even getting complex very quickly in my conversation. But it's really important to keep it simple, and understand what the benefits are, and why we actually are using programmatic. It's an efficient way of buying media, and in a very in a new way, to be honest. So it's it's something that we need to think about. And I would say those are kind of the two key ones: is making sure we educate, making sure we have the right talent pool is really important as well. In Australia, there's 80,000 people that consider themselves as digital media skill sets, and they hold that. And of that 80,000, I believe it's 2,100 consider programmatic as a skill set.
Wow.
So you're talking roughly 2 point something percent of the total talent pool in digital media is stating that programmatic is a skill set. So that's a really small pool of talent that we're looking at, and that makes it quite difficult. I mean, in Australia, the Amnet team is 73. And so, we have a fairly large team, and that's something that we leverage and we utilize for our clients within the Dentsu Aegis network.
Interesting, as you were talking about people that can have this skill set, and it makes me think of machine learning and the algorithms and how they're getting more and more sophisticated. So the question there is, why are humans still an important part of that equation?
It's a really interesting conversation. I grew up playing soccer as a kid, and I was fortunate enough to play for a considerable period of time, and some great players and coaches and teams. And as time progressed, you had the Adidas soccer shoe that had the little chip that you can put into it. I think it's called the My Coach. And then you take the chip out and you put in your laptop, and you can start seeing, how much did you run on the field and when did you stop or when did you start, and start collecting data and start utilizing it when you're training. But what that chip doesn't do is it doesn't kick the ball, right? And it doesn't pass the ball, right? And it doesn't give you the human element of playing. And I think that there's a lot of pros around using machine learning and algorithms, but it's something that we need to think around. What are the ways to use it, right? The ways of utilizing is we need to think about its efficiencies. It's looking at the automations. It is going to supercharge programmatic as we move forward. There's no doubt about that. And in a space where there's proliferation of data left, right, and center, it's necessary to use machine learning to crunch that data. But when you're thinking of real live behaviors and kind of the psychology of people, and that kind of personalization touch, I think it's really important that is still utilized in that user experience.
While we're still in that tech column, how did your team decide on the technologies you would use to run your campaigns?
We have a very set criteria of the technology platforms that we want to use, and we go through a specific process. And I think that is the right way to do. To make sure that you do your due diligence and you look at kind of the key areas. And for us, we kind of look at kind of 6 areas. So first is we want to look at kind of the control. Do we have enough control around running our campaigns on the technology? We want to look at reach. Are we able to reach the right audience utilizing this technology? We want to be able to play with data. We want to play with a lot of data and a lot of different types of data. So we want to ensure that the technology allows us to do that. Also, it's important that the usability of the technology is, there's sophistication involved in it. There's ease of use involved in it. And I guess finally, as all technology comes out, you want to have support, and it's important that my team has that support. And if I look at all of those 6 pieces, control, reach, data, tech, UI, and support, and we're ticking all those boxes, that's what we would be looking at.
So do you think it's important that we build a better marketplace?
Yeah, I think the question is about building better relationships. So I think the marketplace is an opportunity for us to know who we're dealing with in a more intimate manner. And that means that our relationships have to grow. And with buyers and sellers working in marketplaces, there is opportunities to look at, key private marketplaces. And how do we look at areas of taking those buyers and sellers and, making that conversation a little bit more valuable. And those kind of things you start to tackle are, making sure that the right tech is used by both sides, making sure that brand safety is, a top priority for both sides, and the conversation has to be transparent for that relationship to grow, and that will lead to an increased level of trust, which is necessary. And if there is a win-win scenario that's created, then the liquidity should follow. If we start looking at those pieces, I think that overall our private marketplaces or our marketplaces in a whole will become better. But we have to also be mindful that not too far off are marketplaces that will include radio and traditional channels like TV and out of home. And there is going to be a very interesting collide between the traditional media channels and the current digital media channels that are in marketplaces. And, when you have all of those in one place, it's going to be a party.
Have you seen examples of a marketplace done exceptionally well?
Yeah, so in Australia, we created a premium private marketplace. It was called Camelot. And Camelot was essentially bringing the top 5 publishers in the Australian marketplace together and allowing us to take that inventory or that media from all 5 publishers and look at how we can create more efficient buying marketplace where the key metrics were cost per uniques and also quality and essentially unlocking media that wasn't traded programmatically and really encouraging our partners to start trading more in the programmatic space. And that was a first to market in Australia, and it was unique to the Dentsu Aegis network, and it was very successful here.
Yeah, I think once you've seen something in place that's functioning efficiently, then it gives you an idea that it's definitely possible. And then as you're starting to see other conversations about this, where we could have improvements in the programmatic marketplace, I think it's nice to have a model to say, hey, this is how it could work.
It's so interesting that when you have, in Australia specifically, the innovation piece is so important. We have 24 million people roughly in Australia. And so when we are creating programmatic solutions or products in this marketplace, it's so important to keep innovation at the forefront of what we're doing. And I think, the Amnet team here in Australia and the Dentsu Aegis network are really driving that initiative of being, very transformation of how we work and really moving in a connected economy.
What are the challenges that the APAC programmatic market faces? I mean, Australia is more advanced than the rest of Asia, so it seems like it would be an advantage. So maybe you could talk about advantages, disadvantages.
I think all the markets have challenges, and there's positive that come out of all the markets. I'm one that fortunately, I've worked in a number of markets, and I've always learned that you can give and take in each market. There's something that you can share, and there's something that you can learn. And the APAC market isn't anything different. There's fragmentation in the APAC marketplace, but you have a real high penetration of mobile in certain countries. For example, China is doing some amazing things with data. For me, it's about picking what we can take and adopting it back to Australia, and then also sharing what we're doing in the Australia marketplace. But much of APAC is mobile first, and that's something that the AU marketplace can learn a little bit more about. And every year is the year of the mobile, so we'll see how that goes for 2017.
Besides mobile, what else can the rest of the world learn from what you're doing right in the region?
Going back to that piece around innovation and really pushing forward, the traditional media space is moving very quickly into this new environment of automation and data and audience targeting and audience media buying in those new channels. And we're really looking at driving the agenda and the conversation and being thought leaders in the programmatic TV space. So we recently have partnered with, a local publisher and be the first to market around the programmatic TV space and having campaigns running in that environment. And, our conversations are, to continue to evolve the out of home and the radio media channels. And then the creative piece is probably one of the things I'm most excited about as well.
Are there any areas where you see APAC falling behind when it comes to other regions?
In a lot of ways, it's adoption. Maybe perhaps a bit of a changing environment and something that's moving so quickly. And you have quite a vast scale. And I think that's global. You'll have those who really pick it up and move very quickly and take it on and grasp it. And that's from publishers to technology to client side. But then you have those pockets where there's more attention needed, there's more education needed, there's a need for more talent. And in APAC specifically, it's the same. There is going to be pockets that really get it and are really driving forward. And I think there's other areas that, there's a bit of a slower adoption. But as the sheer population of the APAC marketplace, moving the needle there will be very, very easy to do once we get it right in all those pockets. And I think it's going to happen really quickly.
Thanks for that. We're seeing an increase in the rise of programmatic direct deals in Australia, and I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the pros and cons of that, and if your team is executing deals that way as well.
We have some great relationships in the marketplace and in the Australian marketplace, and that is allowing us to do those deals and do those direct deals and to look at what added value that we can create of that conversation. What is it that's unique and exclusive that we can get for our clients? And that's really important for us, is to ensure that we're bringing something unique, different and better every time that we're coming to the table with our clients. And the programmatic direct, it's something that will evolve, but I think in Australia it may be a little bit easier to have that conversation because of the size of the market. There isn't, we don't have a top 100 publisher list as, for example, some other markets do. We have maybe a top 15 or 20. When you think of how we buy and sell, it's really easy to have those conversations in Australia. So the execution and the pros and cons. Pros are that we're going to get higher quality inventory. We're going to have better transparency in conversations, and we'll be able to even look at, how are we able to use data more effectively in that conversation. And the cons around programmatic guaranteed, I think we have to be careful that we're not siloing ourselves out of the entire ecosystem. And it's important that it'll be a combination, and we can't forget that the open marketplace combined with those programmatic guaranteed buys is going to be something that is going to be necessary as we move forward. So I think we're doing it well, but there's a considerable way to go to push more media through programmatic guaranteed pipes.
Seems to be definitely an exciting time.
Yeah, it is. What is it? Every year is like a dog year in programmatic. I think I've been in this for like 80 years now.
Something you were talking about earlier about the importance of storytelling. So when it comes to brand awareness, how do you combine data and creative so that you're delivering superior results?
Yeah, I'm quite passionate about the creative piece because I think it's the next iteration of programmatic that needs to happen. First was the efficiencies of buying media and using auction-based environments or real-time bidding, and we got to that point, and so we could tick that off the box. And then I think the next piece was around, hey, programmatic is really allowing us to use data to be able to target and to be able to effectively buy our audiences at scale. And that's great. So we were able to use that piece. And now it's really about looking at the creative and adding that last kind of messaging piece and doing that in an environment that's in real time, but targeted using data. So, programmatic creative for me, it refers to, a set of advertising technologies that add speed and scale and automation to the creative process. The personalization of creative, it does drive results. I have seen it in campaigns. It kind of goes back to, about the data feeds that you can actually obtain to create that rich data-led creative. If you are able to ingest that first party, that second party, the CRM data, and to be able to get that 360 view of your consumer, then you can really drive the messaging conversation. And those are just things like, dynamic signals, for example. It's sunny. Let's serve some ads with shorts in it. And content integration. Like, do we want to look at kind of those social attributes and the what's happening in that kind of social environment, or is it around the coupons, and is it people are looking at specific coupons, and so there's a lot of data pieces from content to dynamic signals that we can use to really drive that messaging creative. And I think that's going to be an ongoing conversation and something that's going to be a hot topic.
What else excites you? I mean, you've definitely listed out a whole list of stuff that really is motivating you in this space. But what else, besides that, is there anything else you can think of that excites you about where programmatic is headed?
I was talking to someone earlier about this as well. When I first started in this space, traditional media was it was non-existent for me because I'm a digital native. So I always played in the digital space, and fortunately, being in the programmatic space primarily. But now you look at the whole pie, right? You look at digital and traditional because it is all coming together very quickly. And that's really exciting, to actually think that, the number of years that I have been working programmatic is really just scratching the surface, right? You're talking about, okay, technology has evolved very quickly, but we're scratching the surface on data. And, in digital, it's slowly moving into that environment. I shouldn't even say slowly, it is happening. When you have programmatic TV, you have programmatic audio, you have, automation in the out of home space, you have the creative space that we're talking about. So the, the idea of programmatic everywhere is really exciting. And, that allows the opportunities to work with different partners. Now we're talking to radio partners and TV broadcast companies and out of home companies, and then on the other side, it opens up a whole new realm of clients who perhaps only worked in the out of home space, and now we're having new conversations with new clients, and along that journey, you have so many unique individuals that are coming into programmatic with different skill sets. So it's really exciting. So I'm really looking forward to kind of how this continues to evolve, and couldn't think of anywhere better to work.
Well, I really appreciate this conversation. I think every episode we delve a little bit deeper into the topic, and we take some different tangents sometimes, but it's funny how it all fits under the programmatic umbrella.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun to sit down and just have a conversation around a space that I think everybody who's involved in is very passionate about, and rightly so. It's something that we all love.
Any final takeaways or something we haven't touched on that's near and dear to your heart around programmatic?
I guess the takeaways that I would get and that I'd probably share is people and culture are what will continue to drive this space. You always are going to leave it with your relationships. So it's really important that we continue to work collectively as a programmatic community to drive the space forward. And I think innovation, pushing the envelope in the digital environment is almost a responsibility sitting on the kind of pointy end of digital. If you are going to sit up on that side, continue to push the envelope. And I think that it's one of the things that I really enjoy about programmatic, and looking at all the different markets around the world and seeing what everybody is doing. It's slightly different and innovative, and how can we adopt that into Australia? And Australia is a thought leader. Its marketplace is really pushing forward in the programmatic space, and it's a great place to be a part of. And if we can look at those two things and not forget that it's the people that are running this, and continue to invest into the people around us.
Sounds like a perfect way to wrap up the episode. What's the best place for folks to stay in contact with you if they want to follow up?
I'm on LinkedIn, and that's probably one of the best places that you can get me. Or we'll leave it on LinkedIn.
Thanks again to Indy for making the time to come on the show. So for more information, head on over to Programmatic Untangled. We have a website specifically for the podcast. It's programmaticuntangled.com, and there you'll find all of the episodes and full show notes. For each episode, We've prepared the show notes, which provide a recap of the conversation, highlights of the points covered, and some tweetable quotes you can share on social media. We invite and encourage you to continue the conversation there. Tune in next month when we sit down with the CEO of MediaMath, Joe Zawatsky. This one promises to be incredibly entertaining and informative. As we wrap up this episode, we have one last finalist from our intro music contest. This month's outro track was produced by Sean Hahn.